Hello. In this video, I want to cover a quick method to creating alpha transparency in Substance Painter. And this would go well with things like creating leaves for trees or bushes or grass, flowers, anything that could use alpha transparency. We want to do this instead of like modeling out a full geometrical leaf, because the amount of geometry it would take to create a leaf accurately, and then applying that to a tree with hundreds of leaves on it, and then multiplying that tree by hundreds for like a forest or mountain or whatever, you're talking a lot of geometry. So we fake this by using an image or something similar of a leaf applied to something simple like a plane, maybe with a few other cuts in it. And then we kind of alpha out the edges, so the negative space becomes transparent. And Painter has a really good method of helping with this. So for this video, I'm going to just use a leaf texture that I found. And I'll start off with this plane. It just has a 1-in-1 segments. And I'll take the image, and if using 3D Studio Max, I can just take it and drag it right onto the image. And I need to adjust it a little bit. So I think this was probably the way it was. And if you need to go in from here and maybe adjust some unwrap, you could do that. It's just a plane. So we'll use the same texture moving into Painter. Now, right now it's just a plane, so if you applied it to like a tree or a branch, it's going to be pretty flat. So you can either keep it like this, depending on what your needs are and your geometry restrictions, or we could go in and maybe divide some of this up a little bit, depending on how we want to edit this thing. And maybe one down the middle. So from here, we could just bend it slightly so it feels a little bit more organic. Take off the grid. And for the middle here, we could maybe push that in slightly. So you have something similar to this. Now we could do more if we needed to, but I don't want to get too kind of caught up in this part. But in the end, it'll feel a little bit more like a leaf than kind of a flat plane. Now, another thing we can do is just tighten up the negative space just a little bit to help us. And we can select our vertices here and go to Preserve UV. Just bring that in a little bit. The other thing about using just a flat plane too is you can have a material that is double-sided, kind of like this. So in Engine, you don't have to have two sides of geometry. It's just one here, and it will show through on both sides. Otherwise, you'd almost have to like duplicate this geometry and reverse it, so you'd have two sides of the leaf. And you might even want thickness on there too. So this is to help avoid some of that. So right now, it looks like we're good to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this. X. And I'll just keep everything the way it is here. And we can jump into Painter and continue on. And here we'll start a new file. Can do 2048. Let's select our mesh. Say OK. We have our mesh right here. Looks like I do have this backwards. So I'm going to go into here. And if you want to see what it really looks like, you can right click, go to Properties, wherever that is, and turn on backface cull. That way, this is what you're actually seeing here. So we need to flip that. So with all the faces selected, just go over here to edit elements, do flip. Because this is the side we want it on. So we'll just do file, export that again. And then we can actually come back into Painter, do file or edit project configuration, select the geometry again, and OK. Now we're back to the way we want it. So there are two things to get started on when adding an opacity to this. We want to choose the right shader. Right now we have a PBR metal rough, and we should change that to PBR metal rough with alpha test. There's alpha blending, which makes it more like, this is good for stuff like hair because it blends the alpha out better. But for something like a leaf, you want it to be alpha test, so it's a harder edge and it's less expensive to calculate. So if you can use alpha test over alpha blend, then you should do that. So we change that. And then we're going to add in our channels here, we're going to add an output for opacity. So now when you go and you go to a layer, whether it's a paint layer or a fill layer, you can see we actually have an opacity option here. So first thing I'm going to do is get that texture back on here by adding a fill layer. And I'm going to go and make that just base color. And I'm going to find my image again. I'm going to just drag it into the project. And it's going to be a texture. And it's just going to stay in our project here. Import. I'm just going to drag it into the base color. There we go. So now to do the opacity part, we can make a new paint layer and just have it be opacity and white or black. Right now it's at white. We can go change our brush to like a harder brush. And we want to change this to black. You could start to paint out the transparency on here. Tablet might be good here for it to be a little bit more precise. You could also turn on the lazy mouse feature here to help make it smoother. Just got to remember to clean all of it up. Not exactly sure what I'm not getting. I see a little bit down here. I can't actually get to. And if you need to bring some stuff back, you could just go to the white. You can start to bring it back if you accidentally kind of take out too much here, like I did a little bit. Okay. Now you can go and tighten this up if you want. So there we have our leaf. And then you can get into other things too if you want to try, because right now it's flat, it does the job, but we could try to add things like another layer that is just height. To add a fill layer, take off everything but height. And for the height, we could bring it all the way up. You're not going to see anything just yet. And then we put a mask on it. And then if we go in using a black, we can remove the height. So actually we're filling it with a height value. And then we're going to kind of remove that height value to get maybe into the creases here. So I'll do the brush. This time we'll use something softer. And we could go in. Might even want to be softer than that. That's pretty tight. This is just to help give it a little bit more form to it. Actually, I'm going to undo all of that for a second. And I'm going to change the brush. I'm going to take off size. No pressure on size, but pressure on flow. And we'll keep those low because I think the size was making it a little too sharp. We'll do the size ourselves in here. So this way it feels a little bit more natural. And what's good too is since it's a fill layer, we could actually change what we need as far as height value if it still feels a little too intense. So we go to here, we could just take that value up or down. Maybe we just need to make it a little bit softer. Like I think that actually feels better. And this is just one way to do it. You could also take this leaf texture, run it through a program or software that kind of auto generates normals, like even like a Substance Alchemist or another type of normal generation app. This way you have a little bit more control, I think, over what you're doing. Again, this part isn't absolutely critical because it's just going to be a leaf. It doesn't need to, unless it's a very important leaf. You know, just this on the tree wouldn't be a big deal if it didn't have complete normal values. So that's pretty much it. Then when you're ready, you can export that texture out. Export textures, just put it in the downloads, and PBR metallic roughness, and this will tell you the list of exports that's going to be spit out. You also might want to change the PBR metallic roughness to something else. AO with alpha. Document channels AO with alpha, because we want that alpha map too. And then you just export that. It looks like it's done. And then, you know, the end, you could just, if you were back in 3D Studio Max, you could add whatever material this is. Or create a new material. And the downloads here. The only thing we really want right here, just to look at it in 3D Studio Max, is the base color and the opacity map. And put that in the diffuse. Apply it. And the opacity map. Plug that in here. And that doesn't look very good. Let me look at the output maps. Huh. Okay. Looks like it only caught some of it. It's a little bit gray. So in Painter, we can look at the opacity channel here. So I think maybe we need to do the white part. So what we could do is remove this. You paint this all white. And then go back through, fortunately again, I think, and paint that out. That probably works a lot better now. So let's export that again. If we look at now the opacity, this probably is going to be better. Export textures. Same. Export. It should just auto update now in 3D Studio Max. There we go. So there it is. That's it. And then if you had this is like the front view. So now once you have this ready, you can go affect the pivot down here. I can rotate that. And then you can duplicate. That doesn't have any undersides right now, but again, this is just looking at it in 3D Studio Max. If this was going into a game, you'd be more concerned about it, what it looks like in Engine. There we go. So that is how you do alpha in Substance Painter.